If the NFL draft was today, I think the Pittsburgh Steelers already know what direction they would go in. I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have 3 picks that I think are going to fall to them because things are going to change and things are going to ramp up. And man, the way I look at the NFL draft is this is almost peak NFL draft season, but like the first, second week of April is when things are like, oh man, dude, this is what we knew. It's hard because I only got one hand. This is what we knew a month ago at the NFL Combine. This is what it looks like today. This is what it'll look like in 2 weeks because it's constantly changing. And what we believe is going to happen always changes. Always changes. That's what the NFL Combine, like, you go there and you get a sense of what your team is doing, but you have no idea how the board is going to fall. Now you start to get a sense of this is the drastic changes that have happened over that month that have set up the board to look like this. I mean, you could look at the quarterback position as an easy one because Jaden Daniels is going to go number 2, and people are talking about Drake May maybe not even going until QB4. Things get crazy so fast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are going to lock into some things. I think they're going to lock into an offensive tackle at 20, and I think they have the possibility of moving back and possibly securing another second-round pick. I think that, or maybe a third. I think that's a real possibility. I think that offensive tackle is not going to go as fast because people are going to look at it and say this is a stacked draft class, and last year's draft class, tackles went fast when there was no need to take tackles. Tackles were not as talented last year as they are this year, and people rush to them. Who's the kid? Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. That kid in this year's draft is a second-round draft pick. Last year, I believe he went top 10. That's just the board falls in crazy ways. This year, it's going to go the opposite. Offensive tackles are not going to fly off the board as quickly or as swiftly as people believe that they're going to. I think the Steelers are going to lock into options at 20. I think they're going to look at it and say Armarius Mims is still on the board. I think they're going to look at it and say that J.C. Latham is still on the board. And I think they're going to look at both of those guys and say, all right, cool, let's bump down a couple of picks and see where we could go from there. Because Zach Frazier's still around. Jackson Powers-Johnson might be gone, but Zach Frazier's still around. So worst case scenario, we're just going to go get a center, and we're going to feel fine about that. I see the Steelers' first 3 picks going like this. I think they fall back from 20 to maybe 25, somewhere around there. And they pick up maybe a 3rd-round pick. I don't know, maybe a late second. Who knows? I don't know where it goes. But they add a day 2 pick in that process. They land an offensive tackle. And I don't have exact names for you. I just have positions. They land an offensive tackle. That's their right tackle of the future. And everybody says, oh, well, the reports about Dan Moore Jr., they love Dan Moore Jr. in the building. They do love Dan Moore Jr. in the building. They love him. But they love Chuks Okorafor, too. They loved Zach Banner, too. They loved Mitch Trubisky, too. It doesn't matter. At some point, you're picking talent over how much you appreciate somebody as a leader, and the Steelers are viewing this and saying this is talent. This is securing the offensive line. They went a long time, and they saw how bad it got. They avoided their offensive line for a long time, and they saw how bad things got. And then they realized they needed to invest in their offensive line, and they started to, and now they have 2 pieces missing, and I promise you it is not on their minds to avoid those 2 pieces. The rest of this team looks really good. I think that they could sit there and say, we're getting an offensive tackle, and he's going to be a right tackle, and we're not going to mess up Broderick Jones, and we're going to put him at left tackle, and we're going to move forward. I think you move back, and I think that you get Armarius Mims or J.C. Latham. Those 2 would be my pick, but I'm saying a right tackle. Then you're moving up in the 2nd round. You're going to take whatever. You got 2 3rd-round picks already. You're going to take whatever you got to, and you're going to move up in the 2nd round, early 2nd round. You're going to take either Graham out of Duke or Frazier out of West Virginia. Those are going to be your 2 centers. And shout out to Ty Man 55 because he knew what was coming. You're going to take one of those 2. Graham's speeding up fast, but I don't think he's going to make it to 20. I don't think that he's going to get high enough up where you have to take him in the 1st round. I think he's going to be there in the 2nd round because centers are a weird position and people don't value them because there's 32 starters. You know, there's only 32 of them. And if you got a good one, you're keeping that good one. And a lot of teams have good ones. Graham Barton. There it is. I got his name backwards. I was thinking Barton Graham. Graham Barton out of Duke. Zach Frazier out of West Virginia. I think you're taking both of those or one of those with an early second round pick that you've moved up to take. Offensive tackle, center, crossed off your list. You still have Dan Moore Jr. You got to teach him how to play right tackle. He's your swing guy. Hopefully Spencer Anderson is as well and can take a step forward. You go and sign Connor Williams or Brian Allen or whoever. That's your starter unless one of these guys is ready to roll. And I wouldn't rule out that one of these guys is ready to roll. Then you go into the third round and you're getting a wide receiver. And I don't know who's going to be there in the third round. Things get real tricky after the first round, to be honest with you, because there's so many good ones. I think in the third round, that first third round pick, or maybe you only have one third round pick by the time this is all over, you're going wide receiver. Boom. Offensive tackle, center, wide receiver off the board. You look at their defense, what do they need? They need a corner. They need a slot corner. I'm saying after that, you could go get a Max Melton and hope that he's still around if you have another third round pick, or you could go somewhere else in that direction. You could find a slot guy, and I think a slot guy is going to be available even in free agency if they want to go that direction. They need a third corner, but I think Patrick Peterson's very much so still on the board for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I wouldn't rule out him coming back for super cheap. I think that I look at this situation and I say, pick one as an offensive tackle, pick two, you're moving up to get a center, pick three, you're getting a wide receiver, you're going all offense because that's what you need to do is score some points, and the Steelers knew that. Mike Tomlin said it 75 times this offseason. We need to score touchdowns. I'm only concerned about scoring touchdowns. Well, that's how they're going to do it. And I think that's if I had to guess today, if the NFL draft started today, that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers are going. And Craig makes a good point. Dan Moore's contract is up after the season. And I think that that's a major reason to move on because you might extend him for cheap, but you're not going to extend him for starter money. And you've already made that mistake with Chooks, and you're not going to do it again. I'm saying offensive tackle, center, wide receiver.